Hey everyone, this is Eric Keller. I created a video here to demonstrate some of the techniques I use when using 3D Print Hub in ZBrush to prep a model for 3D printing. And I used a fairly complex model as an example because this shows a lot of the issues that you might run into when you're trying to create like a watertight mesh by combining a whole bunch of complicated subtools. So you should be comfortable with Dynamesh and Decimation as well as booleans in ZBrush if you're going to watch this video, but hopefully it'll help you solve some of the issues that you might encounter when you're trying to do something similar. So enjoy the video and like and subscribe. So I'm going to show you some techniques on how you can prepare a model for 3D printing using this elaborately decorated stag beetle model. And as you can see, this is made up of a number of different subtools for the elytra, for the legs, and all this kind of stuff. So let's set the scale for the model. And to do this, I'm going to use the Scale Master plugin, which comes with ZBrush. So let's expand this. I have the elytra selected, and I'm going to click on the sliders to subtool size, which will give us the size in centimeters. That's a little bit small. 1 centimeter length is a bit small. So I'm going to set this to 3, and I want to make sure the All button is turned on, so it's going to scale all the subtools at once. And now I'll hit Resize Subtool, and it's going to go through the process of resizing all the subtools proportionally so they match that 3 centimeter long elytra model. So here's the finished scale model, and what we can do is go back into the Scale Master plugin with the elytra selected and set to centimeters, and then set sliders to subtool size, and it's just about 3 centimeters. So everything looks good. Want to double check and make sure you got all the subtools. Sometimes it'll miss one and you'll have to redo the process. So for this demo, I'm going to focus on preparing just the body for 3D printing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the mouth parts, the palps, out of the body folder that I have set up. So now I have a folder for the legs and all the appendages, and another one for the body. And the one for the body, I did include the mandibles on there. So that's going to be all 3D printed as one object. So what I can do now is I'm going to go in here and make sure that the Union button is turned on for all these subtools. So all the subtools are visible and there's no masks on anything. Then I'll go up into the gear icon for the folder, and I'm going to choose Boolean folder, and it's going to create a new object which is a union of all the stuff that's in that folder. So you can see that that subtool is down here. So I'll turn on the solo button. So this is the union of the beetle body with the mandibles. So now we're going to use the 3D Print Hub plugin to prep this part of the model for printing. And so what I like to do is, of course, save it, and then go into the Z plugins menu, find 3D Print Hub, and click on the update size ratios just to verify that we still have the right size for this part of the model. So 56 or 57 millimeters in length is probably good. And the next thing I'm going to do is click on the check mesh volume. So this is the most important part. So right now it's telling me that this mesh is not solid. It can't be printed because it's got holes or other issues. And this is where the real work comes. I'm going to hide parts of the model so I can just see the inside of the model here. And then I'll go down to Display Properties and turn on double-sided. So you can see there's some geometry in the middle, and I also have kind of a separation between these two parts, a little gap. That's going to cause issues for 3D printing this part of the model. So that's the thing I need to fix. Let's check the top here. The head looks okay. I'm not seeing anything too bad inside there. So that looks like it should be a solid mesh. So let's go about making this a solid mesh so that it can actually be printed. First thing I want to do is go up to the undo history bar, control click on the current undo history state to store that in memory, because we'll be using that information later on. Next, I want to go into the tool palette and go down to Dynamesh, and let's set a resolution. I want this to be fairly dense, so I'm going to kind of pick a resolution here, Dynamesh it. Let's take a look. The result is about 3.2 million points for the subtool, so that should be plenty to work with. So the process here could be a little bit laborious, but the goal is to eliminate any of this geometry on the inside and any holes or any just weirdness that has caused because the geometry is somewhat complex. And the union mesh doesn't necessarily always get rid of some of that stuff. So the technique that I use several approaches. I'll take the inflate brush and go through here and just lightly inflate some of those areas that might be overlapping a little bit, especially in these little gaps and these little hollows here. So inflate brush and smooth. Don't worry about losing the detail because we'll bring it back with that undo history. And then just every once in a while, check and see the progress. Take a look in the inside. Still got some geometry in there. So it's a matter of just inflate and smooth and re-dynamesh and check again and do it over and over again until finally the 3D print hub gives you a message saying that the volume is solid. So inflate brush is one technique that I use. Inflate, then re-dynamesh by control dragging. You can see I just keep doing that. Another technique that I'll use is the insert mesh brush. So I'll find the insert mesh brush and use like a sphere and just use a sphere as if it was like a little ball of clay. So I'll draw a little sphere on there and then use the move brush to kind of start tucking it in to kind of close up any of those weird little gaps in the geometry, especially in areas that are not going to be really noticeable in a 3D print. So again, if you're worried about losing detail, we'll bring it back with the undo history. But mostly want to make this thing so it's okay to print. So you can see everything else is masked, and I'm just kind of tucking that little blob of clay into the area that I think is a problem. And you get better at this with more experience. The more you do it, the more you understand what's going to give you problems and what's not an issue. So I'm just smoothing that a little bit to knock it back. I think that looks pretty good. So let's double check. I re-dynameshed. Still got some geometry on the inside there, so it is going to take a fair amount of work to get rid of that. So I'm going to go along this edge here where there's a little bit of a seam, and you can see a couple little holes. There's a hole right there. Use the inflate brush, smooth, re-dynamesh by control dragging on the canvas, and just keep doing that and checking every so often. So I've lost some detail. So let's go in here and find the history recall brush. And I'm going to turn off symmetry. It's important to turn off symmetry when you're using this because this is a projection brush. It's projecting from that stored history state onto the model. And you can see as I drag on the surface with low Z intensity, I'm starting to bring back some of that detail. But this is not changing the geometry of the model. It's still a Dynamesh model. It's just projecting from what's stored in memory onto my surface. So I can bring back some of that detail while still maintaining a printable model. So the history recall brush is a type of projection. It's projecting from what's stored in memory onto the model in the areas where you brush. And this is why it's important to turn off symmetry and also make sure you're not brushing at too much of an angle, because you can end up stretching the points and introducing new issues, which is going to make it harder to print. Okay, so after doing some work here, let's take a look. I'm going to go into the 3D Print Hub plugin and click on Check Mesh Volume, and now it's giving me a mesh volume value in cubic millimeters. That means the model is now printable. So if we take a look inside, you can see all that geometry is gone. That's because of all the Dynameshing that I've done while closing up the gaps there. The front part looks good as well. So now I think we're in business. So let's take a look at the side here. I'll just hide one side of the model, take a look in the inside. That's looking good. Single solid mesh. So now we can decimate the model. We want to get it down to a less than 1,000,000 points. That way, as the model is being printed, it reduces the chance of there being an error in the printing process. So the software can handle it if it's less than 1,000,000 points. So I'm just kind of taking a look at it now with the wire mesh display on. So this is the Dynamesh version of the model, and it's about 2.3 million points. So let's go into the Z plugin menu, find the Decimation Master, and we can set a value here. And so this is going to take a little experimentation as well to find the right volume. We can set it to 1,000,000, but I think that might be a bit much for this. I think what we want to get is as few points as possible while still maintaining the details. Let's try 500,000. So I'm going to click that custom button, and it's going to go through the process of decimating the model. Okay, so I'll speed up the video here a little bit so I don't have to sit here and watch the orange bar move across the screen. So once it's completed, it comes out to be about 499,000 points, and you can take a look at the wireframe there, and the detail looks pretty good. All the issues have been fixed for this part of the model. I can go through the same process for the legs and the antenna and print them out separately and then glue the whole thing together. Right now, let's just focus on this main part, and we want to go into 3D Print Hub. Down here to export, we have all our various different formats and export options. In this case, I would probably export selected, but it's up to you. I usually use the STL format, or you can send it directly to Preform if that's the software you're using for 3D printing. So the little button here, if you have it installed on your machine, it will send the model there and set it up for you. Okay, so those are a few of the techniques that I use when prepping a model for 3D printing, especially if it's something that's going to be cast into jewelry. Your results may vary, depends on how complex your model is, especially if your model has multiple parts that are meant to fit together, or if those parts are meant to fit together and then move around or something like that. So you might have to employ additional techniques and tools. This video is just meant as a place to get you started, especially when working with trying to get a model into a watertight printable mesh. So one thing I want to mention is that 3D Print Hub plugin that comes with ZBrush, that little check mesh volume button, is not very forgiving. And sometimes you can get hung up on very small issues that your 3D printing software doesn't really care about. So if you keep getting a warning that your model is not a solid volume and it gets frustrating, try exporting the model, bring it into your 3D print software, run a check in there and see if your 3D printing software is okay with the mesh. It might be. It's always worth a try. This process takes a fair amount of experimentation and some practice in order to get it right, and then as you go, you start to learn what works a little bit better. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.